I will call the July 9th meeting of the Traffic and Parking Advisory Board meeting to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic, Parking, and Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding both parking and traffic items in the city of Oshkosh. Since we don't have any items to actually vote on this evening, I'm going to forego the remainder of the typical opening for the meeting and ask when it's convenient for her, for Ms. Binder to call the roll.
Schneider. Absent. Becker.
Here.
Christensen.
Here.
Haas. Absent. Peschel.
Here.
Szynski.
Here.
Staple.
Here.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Anyone with any comments, questions? Seeing none, please call the roll on approval of minutes.
Becker.
Aye.
Christensen.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Szynski.
Aye.
Staple.
Aye.
Carried.
Thank you, which then brings us to public comment, and seeing no member of the public in attendance, we will then move straight to new business. I'm sorry, I take that back. We will move to staff statements at the request of Mr. Collins. We have a guest that would like to get his agenda item bumped to the top, so we go to staff statements.
Okay.
Mr. Collins.
Sure. So this item, Justin Garrick's here he's our city engineer from Public Works. But we wanted to inform you about what's happening here at near the new Oshkosh Corp headquarters. So on Westfield Street and North Kohler Street. So this green area here, so there's a bike lane on each side of the street, and then there is parking that will be along the north side. So this is going to this stretch of the road here. So this is Keller and this is Westfield. We'll have a bike lane on each side of the street, and then there'll be parking allowed on the north side, and then no parking on the south side. So this was congruent with the plan that was put together for this area. So I wanted to let you know that that's being implemented. And the idea is to connect with this. This is the trail that connects to the Wild Wash, and then it's going to connect. Eventually, there'll be a trail along the riverfront here, which will lead into Rainbow Park, and then the trail will come around here as well. So it's planned that this whole area then be connected for bikes and or pedestrians, and it's anticipated that that'll be a highly used area. So I don't know if there's any questions on that or.
Is there parking on Westfield at all, or on the extension?
Yeah, there's parking. I forget exactly how many feet, but there was coming around the corner approximately 100, 200 or so feet, depending on driveway openings. But yeah, on what would be the east side of the road, parking would be allowed for the first couple hundred feet.
I know as part of the plan that was something that was desired as well, to have parking available there, so people that wanted to use the trails or the park, once that the park plan is done, can do that.
Is there any plan to put like some kind of a roadway into the park, like they have at like South Park or Menominee?
The west, from what I can tell from our meeting last night on the Parks Board, the Westfield entrance is going along what's now Rath, is the only roadway that's slated to be in there at this point. So and where that Rath comes back behind the businesses there to the left is a little bit further up where where you are in that corner is actually discussed as a parking area, a further parking area. And I'm not sure it really matters related to our map or our discussion today. The discussion that we had last night actually shows the connection point in two different spots to the tribal parkway, or whatever we want to call that. What we were talking about was all the way on the lower end of the boundary, all the way to the left, where'd your, so there's 2 points, the high point of the west side. Yeah, so there'd be one entry point there for that trail, and then if you go all the way down to where the other 90-degree is, up more, right there, they were talking about putting in another entry point there. Yeah, I think you naturally
Currently,
would
it's like
always,
where the sidewalk is, so.
yeah, I think you'd always naturally have that point to access where the sidewalk is, but I think they were looking for making it as the easiest point for those parking right there to access that parkway. But I don't think that's related to our conversation today.
Yeah. No, it's good information, because I know last night they had the joint meeting with the Parks Board Sustainability.
Bike and ped.
And Bike and Ped, but, you know, from a traffic standpoint, we weren't as involved, but I did want to let you know that
Sure.
the bike lanes and parking is going to be allowed in this area, and it's basically congruent with that plan.
The other conversation that came up that is, I'd say, parking related is the use of Panoqua. And because there's an old building related to the old Gulf Shore that's off of Panoqua, right in line with that ball diamond. That's part of Rainbow Park. And so there was discussion of what is the use of that building become, or its land, does its land become, potential parking that supports Lakeshore or supports Rainbow. There was talk about the end of Panoqua becoming like a kayak or canoe launch site. There's some impacts related to parking related to that. Minimally parking came up in that, but that's kind of the areas where I think, further questions could have been asked related to.
Well, the main thing, I just want to let you inform you of what's going on there, so you're not in the dark.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Justin.
Which then brings us to new business, which again is a topic of discussion, presentation from Mr. Collins, and that is a review of newer traffic control devices and what they mean to motorists and pedestrians.
Yeah, I just thought, take an opportunity to kind of go over some of the newer devices that we've seen. And this, it's a good segue, because the first one kind of relates to that Westfield and Oshkosh Avenue intersection as well. So the new standard for the state and is now being required in a lot of cases for left turns is having a permitted yellow left turn signal, which is the flashing yellow, and that's the new state standard for some dedicated turn lanes. So I'll just play a short video on what those are and what they mean. We do have them just installed recently at the Westfield and Oshkosh Avenue intersection.
Flashing yellow turn signal has become a common sight across Missouri. This flashing yellow indication is replacing the traditional steady green, but navigation works the same. A flashing yellow turn signal promotes caution, yet the freedom to proceed with the left turn when there is a safe gap from oncoming vehicles. This keeps traffic moving and helps get more traffic through the intersection. Remember, always yield for pedestrians. Drivers may not always see a flashing yellow indication. Drivers choosing to turn left may also see a green turn signal, a steady yellow turn signal, or a steady red. A green turn signal means the driver can turn left and oncoming traffic must stop. A steady yellow turn signal means the ability to yield is about to end. Drivers should prepare to stop or complete the left turn if already within the intersection. A steady red means stop, do not turn, and do not proceed forward. Once the flashing yellow turn indication reappears, drivers can proceed with the left turn once a safe gap from oncoming traffic opens up. Let's watch a few examples. A green turn signal means the driver turning left has the right of way. In this situation, the flashing yellow turn signal indicates a left turn is allowed once the driver determines there is a safe gap from oncoming traffic. Here is another view of a properly navigated left turn with a flashing yellow turn signal. In this case, cars are stopped in the left lane due to a steady red light. Once the signal begins flashing a yellow turn indication, drivers can proceed with the left turn once they believe a safe gap from oncoming traffic appears. Intersections with flashing yellow turn signals provide better traffic flow and safety, so expect to come upon these intersections, only now with a better understanding on how they work.
So that's the flashing yellow. Basically, like they said, you make sure you yield for pedestrians first, but then you can proceed with caution just like you would, similar to a yellow light. But that is the new standard, so you're gonna probably see more of those where you see left turn lanes, and the other standard is to see signals over lanes. So wherever there's separate lanes, the new requirement's to have a light over each lane, so it indicates what you're to do in that lane. So any questions on that?
Do we have, other than Westfield, do we have any other flashing yellows in play right now?
Yeah, they so most of the state intersections they read, so South Park and 20th. Yeah, so basically on Highway 44. I
Like
wanna
Quick
say.
Trip on
Washburn.
Westtown and Washburn, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, almost all the state. Any state intersection that they've redone in the last few years have flashing yellow. Those are the ones that come to mind.
And they also have those extended big silver multi-lane.
Posts, yeah.
I want to say every one of them from 20th and South Park over Highway 44 and Washburn, and then I want to say the on and off ramps have them as well. Those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. So I'll be ready for more of those. The second one is the Hawk pedestrian signal, which this is over by the UW Oshkosh campus.
CH Hall.
Yeah, on High Avenue, and I still get questions about this and what it means, and it's a little bit confusing, I think, because we only have one of them in the city. So I'll play this short video.
Pedestrian hybrid beacon, also known as the Hawk signal, normally shows dark indications to vehicular traffic and a solid hand indication signifying don't walk to pedestrians. Once the pedestrian pushes the crosswalk button, the Hawk wakes up by displaying flashing yellow to vehicular traffic. It then goes to solid yellow, which, similar to a normal traffic signal, means the signal is about to turn red. The pedestrian continues to see the don't walk signal. After the Hawk turns solid red, the pedestrian signal changes to walk. Using caution, the pedestrian may now legally begin crossing. After the walk phase, a flashing don't walk phase accompanied by a numerical countdown will begin. Pedestrians may finish crossing if they had already started, but they may not start from the sidewalk. Vehicular traffic sees flashing red. Each vehicle must stop, but then may proceed if safe to do so without endangering pedestrians or other traffic. At this point, the Hawk signal reverts back to its default mode of being dark for vehicular traffic and displaying don't walk to pedestrians. Should another pedestrian push the button soon after the previous walk phase, there will be a predetermined time to allow vehicular traffic to clear before the sequence starts again.
That video doesn't suggest to me that it's a high pedestrian use
No.
intersection.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
It's-
used what they could.
yeah.
yeah.
Any idea, Jim, how long the delay is from flashing red to idle on a Hawk?
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to say it's like 25 maybe.
Okay,
Not
'cause,
positive though.
I mean, I have come up and down high a few times during the school year, quote unquote.
Yep.
And it seems, I mean, people sit there forever at that flashing red light as it cycles,
Yep.
which again, I appreciate, but obviously you can go through it if
Right.
there's nothing there because you've made your stop. But
Yep. Yeah, that's what a lot of question I get a lot is what if it's flashing red, what does that mean? It's like, well, it's like any other flash. You stop and then you can proceed
Yep.
once the pedestrians aren't there. So they come, the other issue they get is, what the students, some of them use it, some of them don't. And then if you get a big group and they continually to hit it, then, that can be an issue too. But the feedback I've gotten from the university is they actually don't like it. They like the RFBs, which we're going to look at next, the best. That's kind of, when they redid Reeve, they paid to install one there. And then Algoma Boulevard's scheduled for reconstruction in 2022. And then we'll probably look at replacing the signal in front of Clo with our RFB, which stands for the rectangular rapidly flashing beacon. And that seems to be more popular. The Hawk the university paid for there, and I think it was a good idea, but like you said, there's some issues with it being real long for motors. They get impatient, and there's some issues with the students that do press it or don't press it, just because sometimes I think then if there's a herd, and they don't want to, they just start going anyway. But then I think some of them too, if there's just a couple, they don't want to inconvenience, traffic necessarily. So it is probably the highest level of, besides putting a regular traffic signal there, of traffic control for pedestrians. However, there's some issues with it. And then the last one is these, which I call the RFBs, the rectangular rapidly flashing beacons. We do have these throughout the city. We have one on Oshkosh Avenue and Congress Avenue for the Wawash Trail. There's one on Algoma and Bent that also connects to the trail. There's one at South Park in Delaware, and there's one at 9th and Minnesota, and then they're also at the Murdoch-Jackson roundabout.
What's that, Oregon Street by the Riverwalk?
Yeah, and then that's a Hawk. I
Okay.
forgot to mention that. There's another Hawk signal at by the Riverwalk. And that one is, it crosses Oregon Street by the Riverwalk on the south side. And that was put there as part of the design of the Riverwalk, because what we know is where we'd like pedestrians to go down to the traffic controlled intersections, but when you're on the Riverwalk and they got to go, a few hundred feet out of your way, most of them are just crossing there anyway. So that's when they designed it. They put that signal in, and that was part of the grant for that. So we'll have to see how that one works. That one hasn't been heavily used yet because there isn't the Riverwalk isn't connected all the way yet to the east. But I think once it is, then we'll get a better idea for how heavily that's going to be used.
More development in that area would bring more
Yep.
increased pedestrian traffic.
Yep, definitely. But I'll play this short video here.
A rapid flash beacon is a communication tool between pedestrians and drivers. When a pedestrian activates the beacon, yellow LED lights flash in a random pattern to alert drivers that they should stop and allow the pedestrian to cross safely. Drivers, when you see the yellow flashing lights, prepare to stop and stop behind the full white pavement marking in advance of the crossing. Remain stopped until pedestrians have cleared the lane and the adjacent lane. Then proceed with caution after pedestrians have cleared the crossing. Pedestrians using the flashing beacon always be alert for drivers not paying attention and not stopping. Push the button to activate the beacons for all lanes. Look, do not cross until all drivers in all lanes stop. And while crossing, stop before crossing each lane to make sure the drivers remain stopped. If needed, push the button again once you reach the center median if all the drivers in the coming lanes have not stopped. The rapid flash beacon is a communication tool between drivers and pedestrians, and if we all look out for each other, it will be an effective tool.
Do you have
Now,
any cases with the center median button? Or?
yeah, we have at Jackson and Murdoch roundabouts, we have the buttons on the center island, so you can do a two-stage crossing. Now, like they said, I mean, the benefits to those are it alerts drivers to look out for pedestrians. But still, as a pedestrian, you still have to be aware that drivers might not be paying attention, so they're not necessarily going to stop. So I know that those are the two issues with them I get is, number one, we get complaints that the drivers aren't necessarily yielding, whether they don't see them or they're not paying attention. And then number two is sometimes we get issues with, pedestrians just don't push it. They go without pushing it. So in that case, it's ineffective as well. However, I do get a lot of requests for these. We try to, you know, and it's more of a matter of funding in which locations have high pedestrian crossings. We were able to fund the one by the Wawash Trail out of the bike and pedestrian capital funding, and then we were able to use some Safe Routes to School funding for a couple of the other ones. But a full intersection with RFBs is approximately 16,000. You know, if we do the overheads and everything, without the overheads, it's probably around 8. So they're not cheap. So that's why we got to be kind of judicious about where we install them. We do get requests for them at the roundabouts as well. But if you think about that, it's 4 crossings at each roundabout, so that's pretty costly. However, you know, if some grants become available, that's something we could possibly look at. That's how we got the ones in Jackson and Murdoch, was funded through a grant where they were doing a study.
So the one that's over on Congress and Summit, I think that is.
Yep.
Is that on here, on the image that they showed a lot of the painting
Right.
on the line. So do we have those lines set back from the
Right.
crosswalk points?
We don't have stop bars there because I think that's from a different state. In Wisconsin, we're a yield to pedestrian state. That's probably a state that's a stop for pedestrians.
Okay.
So we wouldn't put the stop bars there because that tells motorists you have to stop, whereas here you have to yield. So here we have at that particular one, we have the overhead flashing pedestrian crossing, and then we have the push buttons at the intersection. So that's the difference between what you saw there.
Okay.
But aren't you supposed to, at all the zebra crossings, let the pedestrians go?
Yeah, it's
So
yield to
aren't you
pedestrians.
sending like mixed signals now? Here, we're gonna sign some of these, so we really mean it here, and the rest of these,
Yeah, I mean, it's just more, it's another notification tool, I guess. Like they said, it's a communication tool between drivers and pedestrians to let drivers know that should be aware there's a pedestrian.
Well, and again, I agree with Jim. It does send a mixed message.
Yeah.
You're flashing a yellow light when for all intents and purposes, if there's someone there, you
you
actually
were supposed to stop for them anyhow.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you're sending the message that you gotta stop here, but it's a yellow flash, which in all other parlance is merely a yield.
Right.
But again, yield means sometimes you gotta stop.
Yep.
Comprehend that.
So that's just a little information about some of the newer technology out there. And then the only other 2 staff statements I have is Oakwood, the bike lanes they're on the council agenda tonight for the second reading approval. So we'll see how that goes. Seems I've got pretty favorable feedback so far. And then the Jackson Street, we put out a request for proposal for, it's basically 2 things but combined into one request for proposal. So it's a corridor study from Highway 41 to Murdoch, and then it's a traffic safety study / corridor plan for Murdoch to Church. So that was a request with the planning department and then the Jackson Street neighborhood, and so that's out for bid. I think the bids are due next week, if I remember correctly. So once that's in, then we'll have a group together that'll evaluate the bids and then go to council for approval of a selection. Once something's selected, then I imagine this board will be involved at some point with aspects of that.
Does the RFP include a target completion date?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'm
Curious.
pretty sure it was this year.
Okay. Which, unless you have something else, Jim?
that's all I
that brings us to agenda items for the next meeting, potentially, if anyone's got any. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.